nagsaset pa rin siya. Ano ba yan?
Hello and good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Rebecca de Guzman, and I'm one of your hosts for today. I am joined by.
Hi, I'm Reina Reyes Lachlan, and I'm one of your hosts as well. Very happy and grateful to be here with you all today.
And Mabuhay! Welcome to the 7th Asia Pacific Occupational Therapy Congress. This is the first ever APOTC to be held in the Philippines and the first fully virtual APOTC at that. We are excited to be part of this event that has brought all of us here to celebrate occupation, celebrate life.
This Congress is a celebration and showcase of all the wonderful initiatives by occupational therapists around the world. It aims to show how occupational therapy positively impacts the lives of individuals, groups, communities, and populations, a step in our collective vision of making occupational therapy a widely recognized, valued, and celebrated profession in every country around the world.
We will now start the program with the Philippine National Anthem.
Bayang mag-init, peles ng silangan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyan ka ng magito, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiyan. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong buhay. May dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. At lista't ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin na taraw niyang kailan pag may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng luwalhati pagsinta. Buhay ang langit sa piling mo. At nagaya ng pagmamahagi ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
All right, thank you very much. So that was the Philippine National Anthem. Just as a reminder for everyone in the session, during our presentations or sessions, you may use the Q&A box to give us your questions for the speakers. And if your AirMeet is lagging, kindly refresh your browser. Should you experience other technical difficulties, you may use the question mark button at the lower right side of your screen. And of course, Raina, do you have social media?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. So for those who have social media, feel free to post about this event using the hashtag APOTC 2021.
Thanks, Ding.
All right, so we're just waiting a little bit. So perhaps we would now start by calling Sir
Yep, that's
Anthony.
all perfect. Looks like that loaded properly. Okay, so we would now like to call the president of the Philippine Academy of Occupational Therapists to officially open the Congress. And we welcome Dr. Anthony Gresha.
Morning. To the current WFOT President, Samantha Shawn, our keynote speaker and immediate past WFOT President, Marilyn Pattison, the officers and executive team of APOTRG led by Patrick Kerr, the respective WFOT delegates, our SATO lecture keynote speaker, Athena Chai, the respective WFOT delegates, the rest of our keynote speakers, Darrell Barrett, Joseph Kwan, Haruki Nakamura, Kylie Shea, Brian and Winston Maxino, the remaining presenters and speakers of this conference, the past and present PAOT Board of Directors and Officers, PAOT Fellows and the past PAOT Presidents, the PAOT Vice President for Programs, Clarissa Monteagudo, and of course, the APOTC Organizing Committee Heads, Lyle Duque and Achi Gozul, my dear OT colleagues and OT students from 21 different countries and territories, good morning at magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. At last, We are about to start the culminating event of the Philippine APOTC journey. This journey began including the bidding, collaboration, and ideation as far as 2011, specifically during the 5th APOTC in Chiang Mai. Being the new president back then, we were challenged as to how we could bring it to the Philippines. We did not win the bidding for the 6th APOTC, but eventually it was awarded to us for the 7th. There were a lot of postponements, delays, and glitches, but we needed to push through. I believe that APOTC Manila will be one of the most historical congress of the Asia Pacific region. I say this for three reasons. First, this is the first time it is done in a full virtual platform. Hence, pardon the possible glitches if there are. I hope there won't be, but rest assured we have prepared for this. Second, this is the first time that we have integrated an activity for OT students, the future of our profession. And lastly, this conference is organized by dedicated and selfless Filipino OT volunteers, whom I have to claim are greatly hit by this ongoing pandemic, taking into consideration our country's economic status and our government's response to COVID 19. Kudos and our hands to the organizing team, led of course by the APOTC conveners Lyle and Achi, as well as the PAOT Programs Chair Kare, and all the names you can find in page 127 of our Congress ebook. Our gratitude and cheers to the time spent, resources shared, size of patience, and efforts offered, in spite of all the personal struggles, fears, sadness, tears, financial challenges, and family demands. I must claim this is indeed a show of the Filipino Bayanihan, or in English, a voluntary communal effort for the common good. This year's theme, Celebrate Occupation, Celebrate Life, can be considered as both a challenge and a calling, considering two things. One, the struggles brought about by the pandemic, and second, the need to modify and redesign our lives in the so called new normal. To emphasize this point, I ask each one of you, when was the last time you celebrated? How simple or grand was it? And perhaps I might also ask, was it virtual or face to face or in person? Were you able to celebrate it in the way you have experienced other celebrations? Were you grateful enough after the celebration? Asking these questions made me realize that the theme of celebrating occupation and celebrating lives now applies both to our clients, to ourselves, and to our loved ones. With the varying and fluid challenges brought by COVID 19, we are called upon as OT to consistently engage in environmental adaptation and lifestyle modification to ourselves, to our clients, and to our family, all with the hope that as we do this, we can thrive, survive, bounce forward, and celebrate life. As OTs, this is the time that our sense of endurance, nurturance, justice, creativity, and collaboration are all greatly needed to transform our lives and those of our clients and families who we all help and or serve. This 7th Asia Pacific OT Conference is a show of such endurance, creativity, and innovation. It is a conference that showcases how we OTs can bounce forward. Early on during the pandemic, when most of the world was placed in lockdown, the organizing committee made a difficult decision to hold the Congress fully via virtual platform rather than cancel or postpone years later. They have taken on the challenge despite not having any prior experience in holding a virtual international congress. They dedicated personal time to learn, network with other professions and organizations, and identify innovative solutions in order to organize the congress. Furthermore, the PAOT had to also substantially cut the budget for APOTC to align its resources to assist members and OT students adversely affected by the pandemic. We really needed to maximize our endurance and creativity given all the personal struggles and financial limitations. A short way of saying endurance and creativity to the maximum level. Reflecting on each day of the preparation process, we found inspiration and joy to the selfless dedication of each volunteer, the discourse of shared insights, resolution of conflicts and differences, the humility and patience to each person's strengths and limitations, and the creation of more bridges and relationship in our small OT community. Focusing on creativity and innovation, the scientific committee prepared more than 120 presentations in the form of keynote, workshops, lectures, and posters. The committee was flexible enough to call for presentations focused only on our profession's response to COVID-19. It was also a good idea to include various stakeholders and professionals as speakers. I believe that as we transform ourselves, we need more diverse input as a profession to innovate better and become more sustainable in the new normal. I believe that sustainability will be the theme of the next APOTC. Although we have only nearly 500 registrants or participants, 21 different countries and territories are represented, which I believe is still a good number as an Asia Pacific conference. Again, this Congress may have not been perfect or even smooth, but it was definitely an act of selfless love. So I salute the organizing committee and wish that you all enjoy and learn from this unique experience. With sincerity, the PAOT Board of Directors and Officers, as well as the APOTC Organizing Committee, would like to thank all the participants and delegates, the various OT professional associations represented in this event, led by the participants coming from Japan, US, Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, and of course, our very own Philippines. Without further delay, let's start to celebrate occupation, celebrate life in the next 3 days as we learn, collaborate, exchange discourses, and as we enrich our OT network and transform our lives in the new normal. Welcome to the 7th APOTC at Mabuhay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gresha, for your warm welcoming of all our guests. My takeaway from that is really the celebration. I was thinking, when was the last time I did celebrate? I actually got my wedding done right before the lockdown here in Australia. But I know how hard it's been for all our communities to have the same sort of sense of community. And I think from what I've seen from our OT community here in the Philippines and across the world, we have been so resilient and so passionate about our profession that I know you'll all be able to really enjoy what has been set for the rest of the day. So this is just getting started. Thank you so much, Dr. Gresha, for your kind words and getting us all ready for the rest of this program. So we're so happy that you're all here today, our colleagues and friends from all over the world. We have more than 700 delegates from 21 countries, and we are so thankful for your support. That's amazing. So we would just like to honor all our guests today.
We are welcoming delegates from all over the world, and we'd like to share with you from where everyone is coming from. We'll be presenting to you guys the flags of all the nations from which our delegates are coming from.
We would like to welcome our delegates from Australia, our delegates from Bangladesh, our delegates from Cambodia, welcome. We would like to welcome our delegates from Canada, From Croatia, welcome. We would like to welcome our delegates from Hong Kong, our delegates from India, Indonesia, Israel, Japan, Macau, Malaysia, and all our delegates from New Zealand, welcome. Everyone from Pakistan, welcome. And of course, from the Philippines, welcome. From Qatar, from Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, United States of America. Welcome to you all. It's so great to be linked again with the international community. Even if our borders haven't quite opened fully, I'm sure we'll be able to make new linkages through this opportunity.
Definitely.
And before we continue, we would also like to just thank our sponsors for supporting our Congress. So I would like to thank our diamond sponsors, which are the Japanese Association of Occupational Therapists, Chiang Mai University, and One World Connect. Gold Plan Insurance. We've also got our sponsors from Gold Plan Insurance Services, Therapy Works, Academy for Able Children with Exceptionalities, Inc., Goals, Center for Habits, Play Therapy Center, All Abilities and Intelligences Therapy Center, JST Private Resort, and Palawan Special Consumers Cooperative.
Yes, thank you very much to our sponsors. And this is the first time that the Philippines has hosted the APOTC, and we feel honored by the trust and support that we have received from colleagues around the world. While the pandemic has affected our profession in different ways, we continue to thrive as occupational therapists and be of service to the Filipino people. As we are fully virtual, it is rather unfortunate that many of our delegates from around the globe will not be able to explore our beautiful country. We do hope that this short presentation will make you see why it is more fun in the Philippines. I'm sure, Raina, you miss the Philippines.
Yes,
And
definitely. It's cold over here in
oh,
Melbourne.
here, here are some presentations from the different occupational therapy chapters in the country, beginning from Luzon, moving on to the Visayas, and ending in Mindanao. We begin with the presentation from the Cordillera Autonomous Region, Administrative. This is to be followed by the video from Central Luzon. Wow, definitely a wonderful place to visit. Delegates, take note of those places. We would now follow it by the video presentation of Southern Tagalog.
Beautiful. It's a great opportunity for us from the Philippines to explore our own backyard. So thank you for that. Our next video is from Central Visayas.
Region 7, Central Visayas. Hard to miss and hard to forget. Within it is a cluster of islands which form the region: Cebu, Bohol, Siquijor, and Negros Oriental. Sanchu, the name that early Chinese voyagers gave to the Visayan Islands, was not the first group of islands to be discovered by Magellan in his travels. However, Central Visayas was the second he stepped on after Pumonhon Island, namely the island of Cebu, known in old times as Subu, or trade in the old island. The next island he came ashore on, however, was his last, the proud island of Mactan, now known for the very person who killed Magellan, Lapu-Lapu City. Though dead, Magellan has left his mark for bringing Christianity to Cebu and the cross, which carries his namesake, Magellan's Cross. To the southwest of Cebu is the jewel of the Philippines, Bohol, named because of one of its barangays founded by Magellan's expedition called Bohol. It's known for being the site of the first blood pact formed by Filipinos and Spanish colonials. Bohol is most known, however, for its chocolate hills, which supposedly was formed by two fighting giants in their mythology. Southwest of Bohol is the Island of Fire, a place revered for its mystery and deep mysticism, the island of Siquijor. Known for its old enchanted palete tree, the island is, however, full of old Christian churches, choice visits for more religious tourists. And lastly, down to the west of Cebu is the island formerly known as Buglas, meaning to cut off. The Spaniards renamed the island Negros because of the dark-skinned natives they met upon arrival. True to its old name, Negros Oriental is cut off from its occidental counterpart and joins Central Visayas as its last member. Because its wide western coast was facing the open sea, the island was wrought by repeated raids of Moro raiders, a mark that is still visible today with the many old fortresses and watchtowers spread across its shores. Central Visayas is also home to many prestigious occupational therapy schools that continue to produce the best occupational therapists the country has to offer. Located in the island of Cebu are Cebu Doctors University, Southwestern University FINMA, and Valis College. University of Bohol, on the other hand, is the first and only occupational therapy school in the island of Bohol. With many beautiful landmarks, its scenic locations, and hospitable people, what is there from stopping you from enjoying Central Visayas' many gifts and wonders yourself? We hope to see you and your friends here sa Tunga-Tungang Kabisayan. Arina!
Amazing. Thank you to those from Central Visayas. And the next video that we have is from Western Visayas. And finally, last but not least, it's our Philippine Academy of Occupational Therapists representatives from Mindanao. Amazing. Ding, what's the next on your bucket list for when we can travel again
Oh
based on
gosh,
those videos?
I haven't visited Cebu. I would love to go.
Oh, you've never been? Yeah, I went very
Yeah.
briefly. I'm hoping to go over to Siargao. I heard it's getting more and more popularity recently. So that's it over in Mindanao. So hopefully you all have started, making a few notes about your bucket
Yeah.
list.
And of course, the food as well. I hope that you've seen the food and the activities, and you've seen our chapters, and you're welcome to come visit and collaborate with us all.
Definitely. And of course, a trip to the Philippines is not complete without recognizing the talent that us
Yeah.
Filipinos have. Maybe not myself, but most Filipinos will have a talent in music. So we would like to welcome the Manila Chamber Singers to serenade us with their beautiful voices.
Dahil kaya sa'yo nang maitagda nang ako'y isilang sa mundo upang sa araw-araw ay siyang makapiling mo upang ngayon at kailanman ikaw ay mapaglingkuran.
Sa bawat araw ang pag-ibig ko sa'yo hirap, lalong tumatamis, tumitingkat,
that was such a lovely, lovely rendition of Ngayon at Kailanman. And I'm sure that their voices, their beautiful voices, have transcended all the languages that we speak. But for our international delegates, this translates to now and forevermore. This is a song that talks about the promise of love and to be there for one another forever.
That was so beautiful.
Yeah, and
And I
we
think,
do.
do we have another performance as
Yes, we
well?
do. And I think this one, the rest of you will be able to understand quite well because this one's in English.
And it's a flashback to the 90s, I
Yeah.
think. So looking forward to
Yes.
this one.
I recommend getting your heart trampled on to anyone. Yeah. I recommend walking around naked in your living room. Yeah. Swallow it down.
What a jagged little pill,
It feels so good.
swimming in your stomach. Wait until the dust settles.
You live, you learn, you love, you learn, you cry, you learn, you lose, you learn, you bleed, you learn, you scream, you learn. I recommend biting off the onions and showing to anyone. Just wait and see when the snow Recommend getting your heart trampled on to anyone.
How amazing was
That
that?
was
Thank you again to the Manila Chamber singers for serenading us with their voices. I think how relevant was the lyrics to those songs? Hey, Ding.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely, life has caught us unaware. It has a funny way of catching us unaware, and this past 2 years has proved that for everyone. But of course, we live and we learn. Of course.
That's right. And we came out stronger and more resilient than ever. Just linking into, what Dr. Gresha said at the beginning, we've come out a stronger community, and we have so many things that we can take on with us as we continue to grow in our profession. So thank you so much. This is beautiful.
That's true.
So just moving on to our next section. This year's Education Day was dedicated to the memory of a pioneering Thai occupational therapist, Ms. Suchada Sakornsatyan. Suchada has been a staunch advocate and leader of occupational therapy in Thailand, particularly in the area of mental health. As a leader of the profession, she was Thailand's delegate to the WFOT for several years and was elected program coordinator for international cooperation of the WFOT. I invite everyone to observe a moment of silence to commemorate the outstanding life of Suchada Sakornsatyan. Thank you so
Yes, that was
much.
that was a lovely tribute. And Raina, we actually met her in the 5th APOTC,
I
if
was
you
going to say
remember.
that too, Ding.
Yeah,
It's
so
such amazing memories. I remember being really inspired by, the whole team and her contribution to the profession in Thailand. It just made me feel really happy to be part of an international community, because often we feel like we're just alone. And then you see that, there are OTs overseas as well that are doing the same work that we are and are as passionate as we are. So it's so fantastic. And I'm sure even with this great loss, her work will live on in the community
that
in
is
Thailand
true.
over there, and in the people that she supported along the way. So
That
thank you
is
for that lovely
true.
tribute.
Yes, and we hope to make our mark just like her in both the profession and in the world.
Yes,
Yes.
definitely. We can only hope. It's big shoes to try and
Yes,
accomplish, but I think we were all aiming to do the same.
that
What an
is true.
inspiration.
Yes. And for now, we would again like to acknowledge our sponsors for this Congress. We have our diamond sponsors, which are the Japanese Association of Occupational Therapy. Also have our gold sponsors, Gold Plan Insurance Services, Therapy Works, and our silver sponsors, Academy for Able Children with Exceptionalities Inc., Goals, Center for Habits, Play Therapy Center, AI Abilities and Intelligences Therapy Center, JST Private Resort, and Palawan Special Consumers Cooperative. Thank you very much.
Ding, before we go, I just realized I haven't been having a look at the chat, and there are some
Yes.
conversations happening over there. So I did see that some Tracy Partridge Tricker said she had the privilege to work with Suchado when she was an WFOT delegate for New Zealand, and she'll be
Oh,
greatly missed. So great that there are memories. And yes, there are people in the chat. Feel free to use it. Let us know what you're thinking.
yes.
And everyone drop in there too. It's so great to have these conversations happening, even if we are in this virtual space.
We do appreciate the chats that you've been giving as well as the reactions we've been receiving. It helps keep things interactive throughout this session. And now let's call on Professor Cynthia V. Isaac, the current Vice President for Legislation of the Philippine Academy of Occupational Therapists and the former Dean of the College of Allied Medical Professions, University of the Philippines, Manila, to introduce our keynote speaker. Madam Jake.
Thank you very much. Mabuhay to everyone. Please appreciate whatever picture you have of me now. Honored guests and colleagues, we are blessed and privileged to have the Managing Director of MPOT, Access Fitness. She's founder and director of rehabilitation at Access Fitness. The immediate past president of the World Federation of Occupational Therapists, who had been instrumental in the transition of WFOT into an executive management structure. Apart from that, she is also a recipient of the OT Australia National Award, the Sylvia Docker Lectureship, an honorary member of the Swedish Occupational Therapy Association, and an honorary fellow of the WFOT. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored and privileged to introduce Marilyn Pattison from DIPCOT UK, the APP SCOT, and MBA FWFOT. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. It is indeed a great privilege to be here today. I would like to give my sincere congratulations to the Congress Organising Committee and to welcome our distinguished guests, colleagues and friends. As you know, we are following on from the celebrations of World Occupational Therapy Day. Whoops, I have to get my screen sorted out. of World Occupational Therapy Day. I have been an occupational therapist for 46 years, and many of you here today are the future of this profession, which I hold so dear to my heart. We need to continue to keep telling people who we are and what we do, rather than explaining to them how we do it. And when I think about the way that the profession has developed over those years, and I look at the expansion and emergence of areas of practice, I ask myself one question. If an occupational therapist didn't do this or use this approach, who else would? And who imagined that we as occupational therapists could do this in the first place? Regardless, we need to keep imagining how occupational therapists can continue to expand and develop our areas of practice. We need to be like street signs, one on every corner. And as I move through today's presentation, I will be highlighting keywords and phrases that start to capture the very essence of occupational therapy. To really see the amazing opportunities that are at our fingertips right now, we need to have the ability to dream it, to wish it, and to do it. As our globe becomes more connected with technology, as science develops and provides more answers, as the climate impacts the earth, and as our populations age, as peoples migrate because of conflict or disaster, and as our profession expands and evolves, occupational therapists need to have a vision for a healthy and inclusive population. We need to ask ourselves how we, as occupational therapists and citizens, can achieve our vision based on our present knowledge and experience. So let's start by seeing where we are now, both locally and globally. If we look globally, then we think about the present health and welfare challenges. Globally, we have lifestyle-related disease and chronic conditions, referred to as non-communicable diseases. Now, these are things like musculoskeletal issues, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, obesity, overweight, and diabetes, as well as cardiac conditions. There are issues around mental health. We have an increasing elderly population. There are many, many social inequities, and we need to also look to children's health and welfare. In the Asia Pacific specifically, again, we see those lifestyle-related diseases and chronic conditions. HIV is an issue. The need for evidence-based practice within the demographics. Prevention and health promotion. Massive technological development, which varies so much from each part of the region. Of course, we have the pandemic and an aging population. The current script for occupational therapy began with the World Report on Disability in 2010, which led into the WHO Action Plan 2014 to 2021, Better Health for Persons with Disability. Now, the aims of this report were to provide governments and civil society with a comprehensive description of the importance of disability and an analysis of the responses provided based on the best available information. And based on this analysis, to make recommendations for action at national and international levels, for which each and every one of our countries that we're all from today signed up to. So this impacts on the national health programs in every country around the world. What the World Health Report told us that 1 billion people in the world have some degree of disability, and about 190 million have significant disabilities. And multiple contributing factors will increase numbers. For example, changing lifestyles and longer life expectancy, non-communicable diseases, and accidents and stress-related conditions. Disability is an issue of public health, human rights, and development. There needs to be explicit statements of vision, goals, and objectives, focusing on social change for all people in all countries that will enable optimal participation as valued citizens. We need to articulate the features of a disability-friendly society in housing, employment, transportation, recreation, and general community sectors. And the presence or absence of disability in any life can be transient, changing, and responsive to circumstances that are in constant flux. This perspective is essential to adopt when considering the growing comorbidity of non-communicable disorders, where periods of remission and exacerbation will have a major impact on the ability of those individuals to maintain participation in their communities and engagement in activities. This is a key area for occupational therapy involvement, working directly with citizens facing complex problems relating to readjustment and stabilisation. And changes need to mediate the effect of activity limitations on the public sector and promoting health and well-being of citizens. And the vision of disability needs to emphasise that all people, including children and older adults, have the right to make an informed decision regarding what occupations are meaningful and necessary for their quality of life, social inclusion and justice, regardless of bodily function. The language of everyday occupation will vary across socio-cultural contexts, but the intent is to recognise that when the term is broadly defined, occupation refers to all forms of engagement and enactment by citizens in their homes, schools, the workplace, and in employment, recreation, transportation, the natural environment, and other societal sectors from childhood to the end of life. Active rehabilitation needs will fluctuate for individuals. However, the challenge is given to the social and public services to accommodate environmental and structural social changes to enable full participation. Now, the next major impactor from a global perspective was the World Report on Aging and Health, which was released in October 2015. And it states that population aging is a challenging issue, with serious social and economic consequences for many governments around the world. Significant and increasing pressure on health and social care expenditures is one challenge that calls for new and innovative ways of thinking and acting towards an aging population. Solutions on how to organise and develop future systems and policies so that older people are not seen as a burden, but rather a source of social capital. Now, the 5 objectives are all occupational therapy friendly. So that is commitment to action on healthy ageing in every country, with combating ageism as a key priority. Developing age-friendly environments, aligning health systems to the needs of older people, developing sustainable solutions for long-term care in home, communities, and institutions, and improving measurement, monitoring, and research on healthy aging. The take-home message for us, or the take-home messages for us, are adopting a client-centered approach. The client is not simply the passive recipient of help from the providers. Now, as enablers, this is not a new message to us, and we need to be letting people know that we know what we are talking about. Implementing meaningful occupations throughout the education and rehabilitation process for the client. We are occupational therapists. Nobody understands occupation better than we do. And we need to own the term occupation. So I'm going to ask you all to stop calling yourselves OTs. I want you to call yourselves occupational therapists. If we don't give people our full title, how do they know that we are experts? We need to raise awareness of occupational therapy and our impact on ageing and health to other health professionals, to policymakers, to educators, and to researchers. We need to include occupational therapy research goals in ageing and health. And we need to adopt CBR principles regarding capacity building, participation, and education. For example, we need to collaborate with the community to set up local support programs for frail seniors to increase participation. Now, the major group of diseases that has the biggest impact on global health are primarily lifestyle related and result from years of poor health management, be it diet, smoking, alcohol consumption, and even the result of hard physical labour. Many of our health-related habits, however, are often taught to us as children and young people. And by managing these issues throughout the working life, we can keep our populations healthier in the longer term. Non-communicable diseases are chronic. These are diseases of long duration and generally slow progression. And the 4 different types of non-communicable diseases are cardiovascular disease, such as heart attacks and stroke, cancer, chronic respiratory diseases, such as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and asthma, and diabetes. Non-communicable diseases kill 40 million people every year, which is equivalent to 70% of all deaths globally. Now, the current piece of work with WHO is on Rehabilitation 2030. And this focuses around the implementation of rehabilitation services as part of WHO's programme of access to health for all. We cannot have rehabilitation services without occupational therapists, and all rehabilitation services cannot be in hospitals. As occupational therapists, we embrace both the medical model and of practice and the social model, which is community-based. Who else is better positioned than we are to partner with a person on their road to recovery? We provide creative solutions to complex problems and constantly reevaluate and upgrade our treatment programs. We surely are performance improvers. Now, the World Report on Disability also provided some important signposts about the concept and operationalisation of rehabilitation for people with a disability. The success of rehabilitation programs to maintain and improve the functional capacity of an individual has in recent times been strengthened by the innovation of the interdisciplinary management team, the application of technology, and the use of assistive devices. Technology applications and assistive devices are, in some jurisdictions, said to be a low-cost form of rehabilitation and enable people to live in their own homes, even with significant functional disabilities. As occupational therapists, we work with people to achieve their goals and assist them to start living the life they want. We are experts in the provision of assistive technology associated with participation in all activities of daily living. Now, globally, statistics tell us that by 2050, 70% of the world population will live in cities. We will see even more increased chronic conditions with increasing old age. Working with families in their homes will prove less costly than hospitals, and the research shows us that people do recover better at home. Preventative care. This is about keeping people out of hospitals, and I'm going to touch on some strategies a little bit further along. So occupational therapists are the perfect bridge between hospital and home. We understand the medical model of care and the social model of care. Our background in assistive technology, task analysis, and environmental adaptation places us in the prime position to assist people to adapt what they are doing, where they are doing it, and how they are doing it. A truly holistic and biopsychosocial approach. while at the same time accommodating ongoing changes for health and ability status. So what are the global demographic trends around occupational therapy? So we have seen an increase in the number of occupational therapists, students and assistants worldwide across all regions to almost 600,000. And if you're wondering what that looks like, the photograph, I think, shows 500,000 people. We've had an increase in the number of national occupational therapy associations it actually should be 105 now. An increase in approved education programs to 1,008. 89% of the profession is female, and over 50% of occupational therapists join their national association. 79% of countries require registration to practice, and the funding for posts is about 52% government to 38% non-government. And there is no doubt that the profession is growing. Between 2006 and 2020, we have seen a 117% increase in occupational therapists, a 68% increase in WFOT approved programs, a 27% increase in students in WFOT approved programs, and a 41% increase in occupational therapy assistants. So occupational therapists are part of a dynamic and globally growing profession, highly valued in the majority of countries in the world. So let's have a look at what's happening in Asia Pacific, in our own region. So this slide shows the number of occupational therapists by country in the Asia Pacific region. These are WFOT members. The largest number are in Japan with 94,255. And there are just under 170,000 in total in the region. This is qualified occupational therapists. And in the last 12 years, there has been a whopping 211% increase in the number of practicing occupational therapists in the Asia Pacific region. So be assured, occupational therapy is on the move in this region. Asia Pacific is the largest growing region in the world for occupational therapy. Now, as we can see through the history of occupational therapy, members of the profession have created and acted upon opportunities. This is what brings about change and leads to the development of practice. Today, as always, there are changes that are influencing the opportunities available to us all, locally, nationally, and globally. In essence, the profession was born of responses to humanitarian need, pandemics, infectious diseases, and conflict. In North America, it was during World War I, in Australia and the Philippines during World War II, and in Malaysia, for example, it began in the leprosy hospitals. As occupational therapists, we need to develop the capacity and power to construct our own destiny. For some, this might not be a comfortable journey, and yet our whole careers are focused on enabling and assisting people to meet their maximum potential. So how can we effectively work with others if we've undercapitalized our own potential? As occupational therapists, we need to be prepared to be the leaders of progress at an individual, a group, and a societal level. Transformational leadership equates to a collaborative occupational therapists are transformative leaders, and occupational therapists and transformative leaders facilitate changes in behavior, build confidence, and empower others. And isn't that what we do with every client group or community every day that we work with them? And we can all be leaders in whatever role we play. We need to challenge our thinking, our constructs, and our spheres of influence. Being included in the society in which one lives is vital to the material, psychosocial, and political aspects of empowerment that underpin social well-being and equitable health. The social determinants of health, the SDH, are the non-medical factors that influence health outcomes. They are the conditions in which people are born, grow, work, live, and age, and the wider set of forces and systems shaping the conditions of daily life. These forces and systems include economic policies and systems, development agendas, social norms, social policies, and political systems. The SDH have an important influence on health inequities. The unfair and unavoidable differences in health status seen within and between countries. In countries at all levels of income, health, and illness follow a social gradient. The lower the socioeconomic position, the worse the health. Change will only occur if we take the challenge to bring about change, and taking opportunities implies change in some form or another, and change is not for the faint-hearted. Change has a considerable psychological impact on the human mind. To the fearful, it is threatening because it means that things may get worse. To the hopeful, it's encouraging because things may get better. And to the confident, it is inspiring because the challenge exists to make things better. And as occupational therapists, we are change agents. If we want a healthy future, we have to create it ourselves, whether personally, professionally, or organisationally. We work in the present to create a future that engages us in life. The challenge is to be able to visualize what the future looks like so that reasoned choices can be made. Once we know what we want our future to look like, we can make choices that will get us there. Occupational therapists work with all their clients to visualize a meaningful, productive, and positive future, and we need to visualize that for ourselves. Now, there is no denying that the recent COVID pandemic has had and will continue to have a major impact on occupational therapy practice, as well as on us as practitioners, educators, academics, researchers, and managers. However, we need to ensure that the COVID-19 impact on practice doesn't send us into what I call a COVID-19 crisis. It is essential that we continue to reflect on, plan, and promote increased breadth of practice, for that is how the profession continues to grow and remain relevant to society. So I'm now going to look at some of the opportunities that really are facing us as occupational therapists as we move forward. So first of all, we have non-communicable diseases. We've already seen that these are a major issue globally and will continue to be into the future. So occupational therapists have a key role in assisting with disease management and lifestyle education. So non-communicable diseases kill 41 million people each year, which is the equivalent to 71% of all deaths globally. Each year, more than 15 million people die from an NCD between the ages of 30 and 69 years. 85% of these premature deaths occur in low and middle income countries. 77% of all NCD deaths are actually in low and middle income countries. Cardiovascular diseases account for most NCD deaths, or 17.9 million people annually, followed by cancer, respiratory disease, and diabetes. And these four groups of disease account for over 80% of all premature NCD deaths. And the graphic that is on the screen shows the potential increase in these four areas towards 2030. Now, non-communicable diseases can also include musculoskeletal disorders, And the new WHO Action Plan has highlighted the importance of promoting musculoskeletal health in preventing non-communicable diseases. So musculoskeletal conditions are one of the greatest causes of disability. The decline of infectious diseases is one of the major triumphs of modern medicine, but the flip side of this is that people live longer and diseases progress slowly and increase disability throughout life. Occupational therapists play a major role in the management of these disorders, using task technique management, manual handling education, joint protection education, and activity pacing guidelines, to name but a few. I'm sure you can all think of far more. Now, we touched on assistive technology earlier. Assistive technology refers to tools, equipment, or products that can help a person with a short or long-term disability to function successfully at school, home, work, and in the community. Assistive technologies may be as simple as a magnifying glass to improve visual acuity, or as complex as a computerized communication system. Assistive technology enables people with disabilities to overcome day-to-day barriers to optimal function and provide design solutions so that people with disabilities can interact successfully in their environments. Now, providing assistive technology does involve teamwork, and as occupational therapists, we work with people to achieve their goals and assist them to start living the life they want. We are experts in the provision of assistive technology associated with participating in all activities of daily living. However, technological solutions are not the only answer, and it may be more important in some instances to address the root causes of a problem rather than alleviate its consequences through the use of technology. So before suggesting a fall detector system for an older client, for example, a therapist should look at the cause of the falls and whether a simpler solution just may lower the risk of the occurrence. Because as occupational therapists, we absolutely embrace client-centered practice, we look at the person within their total context. So we look for many solutions and then identify the most appropriate. Another major opportunity for occupational therapy is primary health care. And occupational therapists are playing an increasing role in primary care. Working with people in the community, they enable people with a range of health, living with a range of health problems and chronic conditions to overcome barriers so they can participate in everyday life and improve their health and well-being. Occupational therapists use their expertise and full scope of practice to improve client health and participation in daily activities. Occupational therapists act as primary care practitioners or health promotion experts, providing case management, chronic disease management, injury prevention techniques, and caregiver education, to name but a few. Their interventions can also focus on a health crisis or to prevent hospitalizations, shorten hospital stays, and provide community or caregiver support. Disaster preparedness, response, and recovery. Now, in terms of preparedness, a community can prepare for disasters by creating emergency plans that enable an effective disaster response. Occupational therapy practitioners can participate in this planning by lending their expertise in areas such as designing special needs shelters and training staff and volunteers on assisting people with disabilities during a crisis. In terms of response, immediately following a disaster, occupational therapy practitioners' participation in the response can include managing those special needs shelters, facilitating support groups to decrease anxiety, and providing supportive mental health to survivors, first responders, and even military personnel. We start helping the person to figure out what is important, and every day we work with that person on trying to rebuild their life in a small, incremental way. It puts control back into their life and they take control because they're doing it and they are part of the solution. And in terms of recovery, following the disaster response, occupational therapy's practitioner contributions to the final stage of emergency situations, the recovery effort itself, involve repairing and rebuilding disrupted activities and routines. Survivors of disasters need to develop coping skills to deal with the effects of their experience. By engaging in occupation, disaster survivors can restructure their routines to cope with stress and anxiety. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, because I think many of you participated in them, there are 2 online learning modules which can be found on the WFOT Occupational Therapists website. One on disaster management for occupational therapists and one on occupational therapy working with displaced person. And I know that there has been an enormous activity in the Philippines in terms of occupational therapists being involved in DP&R. Now, we couldn't possibly have a presentation in 2021 that didn't consider COVID-19 as an example. COVID-19 has disproportionately affected the poor, minorities, and a broad range of vulnerable populations due to its inequitable spread in areas of dense population and limited mitigation capacity due to the high prevalence of chronic conditions or poor access to high-quality public health and medical care. Moreover, the collateral effects of the pandemic due to the global economic downturn, social isolation, and movement restriction measures are unequally affecting those in the lowest power stratas of societies. Now, these vulnerable populations may include older adults living in densely populated areas, people with a lower socioeconomic status, migrants, and minorities. These groups have higher rates of comorbid chronic conditions, putting them at high risk for infection and for severe consequences of the disease. People holding essential roles, usually from lower-paying jobs such as public transport operators, retail workers, or even some healthcare workers, are more exposed to the public, increasing the risk of infection. Minorities and migrant populations also face language and cultural barriers, limiting their access to accurate information on prevention and mitigation, compelling them to rely on social media to obtain advice that may and often is incorrect. People with poor access to healthcare who experience COVID-19 related symptoms may delay or even forego being tested and may consequently turn to medical care only in advanced stages, resulting in much poorer outcomes. And this may also put their families and communities at risk. Now, the current COVID-19 death toll also fails to capture the devastating collateral effects on health equity. This includes, for example, the loss of health insurance, jobs, and homes, which increases risks for mental and physical morbidity and all-cause mortality. Social isolation and movement restrictions also jeopardize health and access to basic needs and point to the need for human rights protection and the development of public health and social measures. These need to be rolled out in a comprehensive manner and without discrimination against vulnerable populations. Now, a major piece of work undertaken by WFOT in 2020 was a global needs assessment of occupational therapy in COVID-19. And this information is available on the WFOT website. A range of issues and trends were identified, and these give us some ideas of the potential for occupational therapy practice within this group. It identified an increasing roles for occupational therapists in intensive care, post-acute care, rehabilitation, and mental health across the total spectrum of COVID-19. It also identified that we need access to resources, including personal protective equipment, infection control protocols, additional space for social distancing, workplace support and flexibility, and technology. This COVID pandemic rocketed us into telehealth, and we need to include provider and user access to technology, service protocols, work out the funding and reimbursement strategies, and also the acceptance by service users. Education, and in particular transition to online learning, new approaches to fieldwork education, and emergency preparedness as part of the curriculum were also identified as a major theme. Certainly by, I think in the respondents, there were 300 students who responded, and it was the students that particularly identified this theme. And professional issues, including evidence-based information, practice guidelines, opportunities for information exchange. And for information exchange, WFOT set up 2 discussion forums in the Occupational Therapy International Online Network. One was for practitioners and one was for educators to share ideas and to support each other during this time. The survey also identified the need for advocacy around the awareness of occupational therapy and also occupational justice. So this all adds up to a multitude of opportunities for occupational therapy. So remember, the future is not a result of choices among alternative paths offered by the present, but it's a place that is created, and it needs to be created first in the mind and will, and then created next in activity. In the mind is the dream, the will is the wish, and the activity is the do it. The future is not some place we are going, but one we are creating. In her presidential address, the then AOTA president, Dr. Florence Clark, stated, "More than any other health or wellness profession, we, occupational therapists, understand that hope still glimmers in the darkest hour. That's because we are witnesses to and champions of the fundamental power of daily occupation." Occupational therapists' increasing involvement in community-based rehabilitation, disaster preparedness and response, and primary health, among other emerging areas of practice, is based on the concept of social entrepreneurship. Working directly with communities on projects that are meaningful to each community, having influence on local and higher health and policy makers, and working with non-government organisations positions occupational therapists as having a unique contribution to the goals of civil society. Occupational therapists need to understand the vital role they play in what makes populations healthy. What business entrepreneurs are to the economy, social entrepreneurs are to social change. They are the driven, creative individuals who question the status quo, exploit new opportunities, and refuse to give up and remake the world for the better. Occupational therapists, I put to you, are social entrepreneurs, and we definitely make the world a better place. So opportunities will continue to present themselves, and we need to strive to move beyond the traditional boundaries, because that is what they are, boundaries. They're fences in and limit us. In Scandinavia, occupational therapists were among some of the first in the world to work in primary healthcare centres, promoting the reablement concept. In the UK, occupational therapists pioneered working in accident and emergency departments, enabling people to return home rather than be admitted to hospital. There are now calls for us to ride with paramedics so that the person doesn't even need to make it into the ambulance if we can come up with a solution that keeps them safe and sustainably at home. And of course, as I said earlier, COVID sent us all hurtling into telepractice. But it just goes to show how responsive to change in circumstances we as occupational therapists truly are. As occupational therapists, we are international professional citizens. As the world is now our backyard, the knowledge, skills, and attitudes of the occupational therapy profession are coloured and shaped by diverse transcultural exposure, a oneness with humanity and fairness. Interconnectedness with the world promotes a desire to make decisions that will create a better place through engagement in occupations. So we need to show a willingness to take risks. We need to be confident and courageous, daring, intrepid, brave, valiant, fearless, and unafraid. We need to feel the fear and do it anyway. Isn't that what we do every day as we work with people from every background, culture, and ability? Never before in the history of our profession have we had such an opportunity to take centre stage and truly impact on the health and well-being of all people, with the health and well-being focus shifting from cure to functional ability. And who knows functional ability better than occupational therapists? The challenge for us all is to continue to promote occupational therapy within a wide range of differing social and cultural contexts, learning from the past and to make the changes that matter. We need to stand up and be counted, and the time is now. Because remember, if not an occupational therapist, who else will we be able to do what we do so well? Dreams are without question the most important, because without them, you will never achieve anything. Do you have a dream? If you have a dream, then you have a duty and a responsibility to yourself to make it come true. Because if you don't make your dreams come true, then you are just a dreamer. So my challenge to you all is to dream it, to wish it, and to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pattison. We are sure that many of our colleagues have been so inspired by your message of hope, especially during this time. Great to see you. I think we're on the same side of the world.
Yes, I think so.
Have you had your lunch yet?
No, not yet. We're half an hour behind Melbourne.
That's right. Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much. I think for me, what really stuck out is your focus on our identity as occupational therapists. That I think will stick with me. People will just have to deal with me saying occupational therapist the whole time rather than shortening it with OT. Thank you so much. I think it's amazing to see how much impact we can make globally, because we're not siloed in our profession. We are so open to collaboration with other professionals as well. And I think, for me, having moved from the Philippines to here, and I previously worked in Tonga as well, there's so much learning and so many places that we can insert ourselves as OT. And I think, that just your whole speech just kind of reminded me of why I love this profession so much and why I love engaging with OTs again, because it has been a long time since I've been a part of this community. So thank you so much. I think Ding.
Yes. I especially love that challenge that you have presented to us all as occupational therapists. We need to take that leadership role in progress. We need to be social entrepreneurs. And I particularly love that message about needing us to expand our roles as occupational therapists. We need to grasp the bull by the horns. There are so many opportunities out there. Personally, my master's was in public health, and I could definitely see that we do have a role in public health. So we need to go beyond our previous confines and go out. And as you've said, we need to dream it, we need to wish it, and we need to do it. So that's definitely a challenge for everyone. Thank you for that. Yes.
Marilyn, we actually are about to open the floor for some questions, but I thought I would start off with just a question around how do you think, as an OT, we can get involved in so many different things. How do you think it impacts professionals individually, and how can we ensure that we put our self-care as occupational therapists first as well, because there's a lot of talk about people being in the front line and feeling so overwhelmed, so exhausted. What message would you have for our colleagues around that?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I think people do feel overwhelmed. I think that obviously with the current situation that we have with the pandemic, I think that has brought a whole different level of expectation for occupational therapists. But I think it's also the expectations that we put on ourselves. So we're very good at explaining to our clients what they need to do in order to achieve some kind of balance in their lives. But we don't, sometimes we teach what we most need to learn. So we need to be prepared to listen to our own words and to apply our own principles. And in a funny sort of a way, there's nothing more, convincing to a client to say, when I feel overwhelmed, this is what I do, and this is what I find works for me. But we have to be kind to ourselves. I think we have to not have rules for other people and rules for us. We can't save the world in a single day. And do we want to do 10 things well or 20 things badly? And then end up feeling disappointed, which then impacts even more on our mental health. So we need to look to our own mental health and well-being.
That's true.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And our theme is celebrate occupation, celebrate life. So really occupation is life, and we're occupational therapists are humans too. So that's important to remember. I'll just open the floor for any questions. So if anyone has any questions in the chat, you can type them in. Someone just said, is Kira Tinot said so inspiring. So thank you for that.
Oh, we do have one question already. This is from Lim Sok Mui Mei. They say, with expanding our roles beyond occupational therapy, do you have any tips balancing portraying our OT identity versus doing what needs to be done without calling what we do occupations, using more general language and pushing other social determinants?
I don't know that we are expanding our roles beyond occupational therapy. I think what we need to do is to think very clearly about what we're doing at the moment as occupational therapists is occupational therapy within that context. But we can take occupational therapy to other contexts, still occupational therapy. I think where the confusion comes is if we find ourselves working in situations where we don't have the title occupational therapist. And this has been a major issue of our area of debate for a long time in the profession. But even if you're not called an occupational therapist, you still use your occupational therapy skills and abilities. And that's why occupational therapists are so successful, because there is that equation between occupational therapy and transformative leaders. And I think one of the things that I would like to see is often, what we don't see coming up is if people do move on into professions where they have a different title and more senior roles, they don't always acknowledge that their background is occupational therapy. And I think that, for example, the Secretary General of the Federation for Aging is actually an occupational therapist. Oh. So, and we see, a lot of the technical advisors in World Health Organization are occupational therapists, of course, of which Daryl Barrett, who's speaking this afternoon, is one. Although those guys are very quick to say that they're occupational therapists. But we really need to push the fact that people understand that even though we're not called occupational therapists, people know we are an occupational therapist.
That's true. That's true. So we're reclaiming our identity. We're seeing our identity much clearer. there is a question coming in from the chat. It may be related to the previous one. They'd like to ask, how do we differentiate how an OT should address the social determinants of health compared with a public health specialist?
Well, the social determinants of health are all about health equity. And the work that we do, I guess, is around giving people equitable access to health promotion, illness prevention, healthier lifestyles. Whereas I don't know what the definition of a public health specialist is. I certainly know what the definition of occupational therapist is. So we will come across certain groups who will pretend that they can do what we do. Okay, that's going to happen because what we do is very exciting and it gets lots of outcomes. So imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. People will try and do what we do, but they can't. And I think that's what we need to be very clear about, is that, look, is to acknowledge that what other professions do is great and has a contribution to make, but they're not doing what we do. And so we also have a very strong contribution to make as well. And I think that's, so again, it's about telling people what we do, who we are and what we do. It's not about telling people how we do it. Because then we enable people, then they go away and pretend they think they know what they're doing and they'll have a crack at doing it. And we don't want that to happen.
Wow, it seems that the challenge that you have presented us also comes with a forewarning that we have to also protect our profession as well.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I believe Sir Anthony Gresha has a question for you. Sir Anthony?
Hi. Thank you. Thank you for that inspiration. In terms of social entrepreneurship, how do you think we could balance social entrepreneurship and at the same time, business, the business aspect and sustainability in a way? So that's my first question in relation to social entrepreneurship.
Sure. And I think we could, we can have I have a business, and I think we can have a business, but we can still, so there's nothing, if you're not in business, if you're not going to not make money. So of course, that's where the business entrepreneurship comes in. And business entrepreneurship is around, obviously, running a business and making a profit, because if you don't make a profit, you can't keep your business running. But you can take a very a socially entrepreneurial focus within that business model. I mean, with I have across MPOT and Talking Matters, I'd have 80 staff, I think 60 clinicians, and we teach them all how to advocate for what their clients need to get them the most equitable access to services and funding that they require. So that is in our minds while we're working with the clients. So it's about how do we bring in that advocacy role. Social entrepreneurship is not about giving services away for free. Social entrepreneurship is not about social welfare. So that's what we need to be very clear about that. But it's the social entrepreneurs that are the change agents. And really, if you have a business and you want to be the leader in your field, in that business, then I believe it's inherent upon the leaders in the field to change the industry. So they still have that business entrepreneurial approach, but then there's that advocacy which brings the rest of the industry along with you and makes those changes, those social changes.
Thank you. That's clearly said. Just to follow up, though, this social entrepreneurship and transformative leadership, at times I'm reflecting, it's currently reflected in our OT education system. I guess it's something to fight for, to dream for.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And there's more and more being written about it, I think.
Okay.
And certainly I know that I spoke about this in 2006 at the WFOT Congress in Sydney. And so the article was published, and there are other articles that have subsequently been published around that whole topic.
Thank you so much, Sir Anthony, for those wonderful questions. And I'd just like to read some comments coming in. So they're saying, thank you very much, Marilyn. It was so inspiring. Thank you for that enlightening discussion. It seems that people have taken to heart that we need to be proud to be occupational therapists. That's good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there is a comment that I recall the 2006 speech, and it was an amazing one, just like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that I did say in that speech, and I've said it many times since, is that if anybody asks you what is an occupational therapist, don't go onto your back foot. Do not feel defensive. Just look them in the eye and say, you mean you don't know?
That's a very good point. I think I can relate to that really, Marilyn, because at the moment my current role isn't an occupational therapist. So I'm an early childhood practitioner. So it's, same, but different, we like to say, but I always love to, bring forward the fact that I'm an occupational therapist first. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're successful in that role because you are an occupational.
Oh, thank you. I would hope so. Yeah, it's great because you get to work with a really multidisciplinary team. And I think you mentioned that's, we have so much opportunity to be around other professionals as well.
Yeah.
We do have another question that's come through the Q&A, and I think we may have time for this one and maybe another question. We'll see. Anya Sanchez mentioned that she admires you for your great knowledge and humility, Marilyn. And how can we prevent other professionals from imitating our techniques to preserve our identity as occupational therapists? I think this comes from a space wherein potentially there are areas where there are limited access to occupational therapists, in more regional areas, and there is a growing need there. How would you suggest that we address that issue that's growing in particularly other developing countries as well?
Sure. And I think it's kind of like a multi-level response. And I think part of that response starts with the association and at a government level. So talking about the need for occupational therapy, I think it's also at the evidence-based level, because, we have so much evidence now around the efficacy of occupational therapy interventions. But I think that we also have to be a bit pragmatic about it. One of the problems when I first came out to Australia in 1979, I worked in an area where we had very few occupational therapists. And so we set about trying to create occupational therapy positions. But you can have as many occupational therapy positions as you like. But if you don't have occupational therapists to fill them, then ultimately the people who are creating the positions will fill them with other professions, because they'll go for second best. So it's also about saying, look, we understand that we don't have the numbers that we would wish to have, but the numbers are growing. However, that the occupational therapists in those situations where you've got people working who aren't occupational therapists, there needs to be a consultancy model in place so that somebody is literally telling them what to do. So the occupational therapist is still the holder of the intellectual property. It's around ownership of intellectual property in those situations. And then as people, there's the opportunity then hopefully for some of those people to transition into occupational therapy roles.
Yeah, beautiful.
And get qualified as occupational therapists, sorry.
Yes, yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for that response. I agree. I think it's it's all about identifying the needs of the community too, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like, you know, people aren't just doing that because they want to or they want to make money. Sometimes there is a need that is not being met, you know? So I think it's great for us to, rather than get our backs up, collaborate.
Yeah,
That's true.
Fantastic.
That's true.
Yeah.
Do we have time for another question, Dean? There's another one that's popped up just here.
I think we have time for one more question, but before that last question, I'd like to read something from the chat. Thank you very much, Ma'am Marilyn. OT is a very wonderful profession indeed. I chose this profession to help my brother with autism spectrum disorder, but as time goes by, I felt like this profession was meant to find me, as it also inspires me daily to keep going.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
we have our final question.
Yeah, let's do it. So do you want me to go ahead and read it,
Yeah,
Dean?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So, Marilyn, what are your thoughts about workforce diversity in occupational therapy, and what can educational institutions do to promote this?
When you talk about workforce diversity, are you talking about cultural diversity? Is this cultural diversity?
I would say it's probably around the different areas in which we work in. Would that be correct?
The different specialties.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Okay. I think what tends to happen when we have, again, I'll use MPOT as an example. So at MPOT, we actually have a graduate program. We actively recruit graduates. We run what we call a transition to practice program, where we talk to them about all of the opportunities that exist for occupational therapists. And we talk about how overwhelming it can be when you're trying to decide what you want to do. But our advice to new graduates is to, you need to consolidate your practices and principles, and then to then look at some of the different areas that you can work in. And as you emerge as a therapist, as you move through your career path as a therapist, you find that new opportunities will present themselves. You may go and try 1, 2, 3, 4, however many opportunities. And eventually what will happen is that you will decide on your own career path. You will move into your own specialty. So it's highly unlikely that, when you graduate from university, people feel like spoilt for choice, overwhelmed, because where do I work? There's too many choices. And it's a question of saying, right, where can I go to absolutely consolidate my practices and principles, and then I can work out how to apply them within the different contexts, because that's really what it's about.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Marilyn. What a pleasure to have you here today.
Yes, and we've gotten such wonderful questions as well. The talk has really inspired a lot of OTs who are watching today with us. And
I think we could keep
unfortunately,
going on and on.
yeah,
We?
we would love to keep on going, but the time has come for us to close the Q&A. So thank you everyone for that. And we would like to present the certificate of appreciation to our speaker, the Philippine Academy of Occupational Therapists and Learning Enablers awards this certificate of appreciation to Miss Marilyn Pattison for sharing her invaluable knowledge as keynote speaker during the 7th Asia Pacific Occupational Therapy Congress hosted by the Philippines via AirMeet this 22nd of November 2021, signed by Roland Lyle Duque and Arcel Rosario Gozon, co-conveners, and Dr. Anthony Gresha, President of the Philippine Academy of Occupational Therapists.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Okay, bye everybody.
Goodbye. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
All right.
All right. That was so interesting, and I learned so much. I took down so many notes. My sheet is packed. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, that's just the beginning. First day. Here we go.
It's true.
So I'll go back onto my script now. So this is just so exciting. All right. So today's presentations will be on education, dementia and palliative care, participation and innovative initiatives in the community, OT in schools. Wow, it just goes on. Okay. Quality assurance, mental health, stroke, vision, and disaster risk reduction and response. You may check the schedule for the day by clicking on the events button in the reception area, which, yeah, if you have any questions, just pop it into the chat. Please take note of the rooms of the parallel sessions that you would like to join later after the morning break. Oh, sorry, Ding, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah. So, again, this is the first time that we have gone fully virtual, and we hope that you are able to optimize this experience by exploring the exhibition hall or taking a seat at the social lounge. So, I don't know if you've seen it, but we have tables ready for you where you can chat with other delegates from colleagues from all over the world. And now we will be proceeding to a 30-minute break before we start with the presentations. We will begin the parallel sessions by 10:30 a.m. This is in Philippine Standard Time. And these sessions for this morning would be about education, occupational therapy and dementia and palliative care, occupational therapy and participation in community, quality assurance in occupational therapy, and there's also a workshop on mental health. So after the parallel sessions, we would like to also invite you to a luncheon presentation by One World Connect, our diamond sponsor, at 12 noon. And afternoon sessions will be resuming by 1 p.m. So once again, we are going to take a quick break for 30 minutes. You may come back by 10:30 to engage in the parallel session. So enter the rooms of your choice. And you may spend the break chatting with our colleagues from all over the world. This is your chance to chat with people from New Zealand, Australia, Japan, also other places that we have mentioned from earlier. So that ends our first half or the first part
Thank
of this
you.
morning. Yes.
Thanks,
And
Ding. I think this is the most social I've been in 2 years. So I
that
will
is
be in
true.
that social lounge. That sounds very exciting. Grab a cuppa or a cup of coffee. Looking forward to seeing you all there. See you at 10:30.
All right. So thank you, everybody. Let's be back by 10:30. Thank you very much.